pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. It can be disclosed now or at any time during the meeting. And we'll move to finance 2024 budget. And first order is preliminary reserves, and I'll turn that over to Brandy.
Okay, so if we look at the capital sheet, I can tell you the differences from the last meeting to this meeting, the changes that have been made. So the only cut that I got indication that council was willing to do was the pedestrian bridge. So I cut that in half under the impression that we would just fix the one bridge. The dam, I was able to cut $20,000 from that. The culvert capital has increased 200,000, but it's not really increased. It was just on a lower line under holdbacks, so that didn't change the overall number. It just moved. We were able to take $1,000 off the cemetery columbarium. We had to add 54,000 to pool building for the pump. That was presented at the last meeting and approved. And sewage pump station capital increased 25,000. Tyler got a better quote on something that was required. And so that's the only changes in the actual costs. The original one I gave you didn't allocate any of the grants. So for the culvert, the outstanding 2023 OCIF of 25,000 was allocated to that, along with the 2024 OCIF of 200,000, which is just an estimate. We don't have an actual number yet. NORD's funding of 105,000 and federal gas tax of 600,000. You'll recall we have to use 340 this year, but in order to try and keep the tax rate down, I allocated 600. That is subject to change. I'm still deliberating the benefits versus regarding taking out of gas tax versus regular reserves. So with those changes, that brings us to a 4.8 tax increase and a 3.9 levy increase. The reserves sheet I gave you showed under these assumptions the original starting draft reserves and what this budget takes and what the ending balance would be. It's a lot. It's a lot taking from reserves. The and especially when you consider the obligatory reserves. So at the end of the year, if you, disregarding those, the balance would be 2.862, which is extremely low. Oh.
Sorry, Councillor Knowles.
Thank you. Brandy, how do you arrive at the percentage of the increase versus taking down the reserve? Like, do you have a specific formula for that, or are you trying to hit a specific sweet spot just in terms, because you said the reserve is going to be low, but in order to determine the tax rate? Like, so if there was more in reserves, the tax rate would have to go up to make up that difference. So how do you kind of arrive at that, whatever that right spot is that you're presenting us?
I'm not
So
sure
that's a
I
very loaded
understand the
question.
question. Basically, what I do is try and get a read from council as to what they want, um, and then go from there. So basically, I got the impression that council didn't want to do a lot of cuts and wanted to take from reserves. So I went down more than I'm comfortable with taking from reserves, but at the same time, we can't have a 20% tax increase. So again, um, this meeting is to try and get some direction to council as to where they want to be and how we want to do it.
Thank you.
While everybody's looking at the numbers and thinking, I will give my comments on it. Is I think even 4.8 is high, and I would like to see what we can do to lower that as well. The tax rate in Atikokan is high for business and residents. I think it's our obligation to do what we can to uh, look after the businesses and the residents of Atikokan. And I know it's tough. People are in percentages is kind of a gift that keeps giving. So when it's 4.8, and then the next tax rate increase is a percentage on top of that percentage, I think we should explore opportunities to try to. We got a lot going on. We're paying for a lot this year, and I think we have to do what we can to be fiscally responsible, whether it's generating revenue, whether it's cost savings. Uh, it is our obligation to do what we can to give the best value for the people of Atikokan. That's my feeling. I'm still don't want to pat ourselves on the back for 4.8. I'd like to see us do better. Yes, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. I sympathize with you, but I also think we have an obligation to the citizens of Atikokan to maintain the services that we provide for them and that they are used to having. And the big cry that we all know of is our infrastructure and our roads. And if we keep passing minimal tax increases, we're not going to satisfy that need. So somewhere along the line, we're going to have to bite the bull a little bit harder to achieve those goals. That's my opinion. I I could live with a 4%.
I could live with 4% as well, but we're talking 4.8.
Mm-hmm.
I could live even better with 3.9, but that's my feeling. We're doing $7.7 million. We're not saying that we're not doing our infrastructure. We're spending $7.7 million on a major infrastructure project,
Mm-hmm.
plus a lot of other things. I think there's maybe an opportunity to try to lower that somewhat as well. I know it's very, uh, the treasurer is very conservative on our revenue, which I appreciate because we're preparing for the worst and hoping for the best, but I think there is opportunity to do something different. That's my feeling. Yes, Counselor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. Brandy, if I may ask you, what dollar value would a .8 reduction be? Like if we were to try and get it?
Probably about 67,000 or so. At 1%, to take off 1%, we would have to cut $69,000. Or take that money from reserve. I mean,
Which you are reluctant to do.
well, those are your only two options, really. Either cut something or take it from reserves, and so both options are available. We're already taking a lot out of reserves, so I'm not recommending taking this much out of reserves, but
I wanted to hear, yeah, thank you.
So I thought long and hard on this over the weekend, and something that I came up with was we have $150,000 for two new trucks. Uh, I would like to see us cut that to one new truck. We have we have the old garbage truck, we have a roll-off truck, and we have four bins or two bins that are going for sale. Uh, I would like to put, I don't know if we can do this, but if we approve the 75,000 for one truck and on the premise that if we do sell or when we do sell that equipment that we're looking to get rid of, that money could go towards a second truck. So according to the treasurer's numbers, if we reduced it 75,000, that would put us at 3.9% at your numbers. We're taking one truck out of service and we're buying two. That's math kind of.
the revenue for the surplus sale is already included in this budget, but not a cut to the equipment, obviously.
Yes, Tyler.
Just clarify, it's not 150,000 for two trucks. It's 150,000 for two trucks, a dump trailer, and to put money into reserve for a future large purchase, like a $350,000 street sweeper that we tried to save up beforehand. And further to that, we did not take one truck out of service and get rid of two. We took three trucks out of service, and we are purchasing three if you include the garbage trucks.
So we've already counted that money for selling that equipment before we've sold it?
Yes. For our budget, we estimate, what we're going to receive and so it is included in the current numbers, what our expectation is, and I generally try to go low on the revenues just in case.
Yes, Councillor Zacharias. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. Just looking at the long form preliminary budget, I was going through like a few lines. Like there's line 533. What is catch full-time labor? Okay. Over like the last 4-year historical average, we only spent like average 12,000 a year over the 4 years, but the budget's 25,000. So like, would something like that, could that not be cut to
Normally, Public Works budget is pretty static because if they're not working on the catch basins, they're working on the sidewalk. If they're not working on the sidewalk, they're working in the gravel pit. So overall, the numbers themselves vary, and they're often out at the end of the year because we had got too much snow, so they had to do more snow plowing than we thought. But overall, the labor is the labor. Like they still work, whether they're on one job or another. They don't get sent home, and we save money, kind of thing. So,
sure.
So it's just how it's allocated that.
Okay. And then next, but now materials and service. Same thing. 4-year average is like under 5,000, but we have 8,500 budgeted. Could that not be brought down a couple thousand? Like it's only a couple thousand. And same with golf material and services, 14,000 over the 4 year. That's 657 line. And the budget's 21,500. I feel like that could be brought down reasonably. And ski materials and services, line 668, only about 8,000 over the 4 year. And it's 24,000 is the budget. Unless we're anticipating something major. Um, Same with 753 library office supplies, less than 5,000 average for 4 years, and the budget's requesting 7,500. So wondering if there's anything major there. 836. Am I going too fast? No. Okay. 836 Charleston Material and Services, about less than 3,500 over the 4 years, and its budget's 7,500. And then the water training seminars and conferences, about less than 3,500 over the 4 year average, and the budget's 15,000. So are we anticipating more seminars that year or this year, or?
I can speak to that.
Yeah.
So for water training, historically, we obviously COVID shut down most of the conferences and the training courses.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking to doing a big pull here to actually get people to training. They're going in like a couple months, and then with that, usually wind up going to a conference or two when you have your certificate. So
Okay.
and back to historical norm.
Fair.
Yes, Councilor McQuay.
Thanks to you, Janelle. I think you hit it on the nail on the head with that. It's 2024. COVID shut down 2020. So I would be reluctant to feel like these numbers may be a true indication of what we would have spent had we been open and doing the things, especially rec stuff, because we really were shut down a lot. However, I still think it would be worth looking into and then taking into consideration the fact that everything in the world is, doubled or tripled in price as well.
But like on this budget, the preliminary budget, it's 2018, 2019, 2022, and 2023.
Yeah, that was an
Actually.
error. I had been hiding columns and
Ah.
must have left those ones in by accident.
So is this the 2021 and 2020 numbers then? Or is it
No, it is
2018 and
18 and 19.
okay. So kind of cuts out COVID.
20 and 21 were accidentally hidden.
Okay.
COVID did really screw up the budget in the sense though of trends,
Mhm.
because normally your operations is pretty static and it's quite COVID really did a number on that. So it really and then also being without a contract for 3 years, and then labor numbers are generally pretty static as well, whereas this and this is another contract year, it's up for renewal. So the budget has been a little more challenging than the norm. Everything's not as static as it used to be.
No, for sure. I feel like this is more of an accurate representation. I mean, it's pre-COVID and post-COVID kind of cuts out COVID. I don't know. These are my thoughts. Like, yes, they're all minuscule by themselves, but I mean, added up over multiple lines. And these are just the ones that I've highlighted.
Yeah, and I can't speak to each individual line. The department head would have to speak to that, but sometimes the number is kind of a historical average. And for Charleston, for example, you try not to use it, but sometimes you have to. So in that case, and then with the intention of hopefully putting some money into reserve at the end of the year. But when something breaks or something goes wrong, and same with the ski hill, you can at least fix it.
Okay. All right. Well, that was my attempt.
I do have further work to do on operations. I didn't get as much done as I had hoped, but in the end, I don't expect that to be any significant savings, hopefully some here and there. And also even numbers keep coming in. Like today, I had to add $2,000 to the budget for a grant that came in under our expectation. And then 5 minutes later, I was able to I was able to decrease a budget line for another contract that came in less than we wanted. So, and this will happen continuously until the budget is done. So, and department heads will get better quotes and that sort of thing.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Brandy, I'm looking at the reserves draft sheet here. I'm having trouble following everybody, but on the reserve draft, you got sick leave and severance at 725,000, 196. What's that all about?
So that is basically a reserve recommended to have. Um, Basically, if everybody was to retire or be sick and we were to shut down the government today, that's what we would, or roughly, that's an older number. But in a perfect world, you would put money into that reserve every year so that you were fully funded for all your um, sick leave severances liabilities. And then generally what we do each year is when we have a retirement, we budget for it. But the other option you could have is every time there's a retirement or something, you would take it out of that reserve.
So, and that's been going on for how many years? So you got $750,000 just sitting there?
Just a few years, actually. It was recommended years ago by the auditors, so it took us a little bit to get it funded. The other one is the environmental. That's also money that is not to be used. It's basically there funding our liabilities. So these are liabilities the town owes and is responsible for. So financially, to be financially responsible, it's in our best interest to have the funds.
That was my next question on the environmental because, that, I assume that's for when the garbage dump has to be, decommissioned or whatever. So, I mean, we're 20, 30 years away from using that money. I think there's money here that we can borrow, borrow against, to bring the tax number down like Mayor Ferguson suggested.
Well, we can take from reserves without touching those. I don't recommend we touch those. Um, those are liabilities that we should be adjusting every year. But there are
Thank you.
other reserves available.
So, Brandy, what the reserves and not money that we budgeted last year and went into reserves because we didn't get the work done. What percentage or what amount would we be drawing down? Like I say, we take off the money that we just put into reserves in December because we didn't do the work. So what approximately, like, we had a certain amount of reserves and we're taking this much out. And
So I think originally the last meeting, I only took out basically what we had put in last year. So that amount was 1,241,576. And that has now changed to 1,973,576.
so the interest that we realized last year on our money in reserves, Is that included in how much we put into reserves?
For the obligatory reserves, it gets allocated to those reserves, but for general reserves, no, it goes into our income. So it'll be in our surplus deficit.
So we should realize a similar amount this year.
Not likely, because we'll be spending money this year. We haven't really spent any money the last couple of years, so, but this year we're going to be spending it all. So I expect the interest revenues go down significantly.
Yeah, like I said, we're it's a pretty conservative estimate on our revenue. And again, I appreciate that because it's taking the safe route, but on the other side, I think it leaves opportunity to share some of that conservative allowances with the ratepayers, if that makes sense. So and I'm just gonna say my feelings and then I'll let it go, that if we have to find $65,000 in savings to bring it from 4.8 to 3.9, with the amount we planned on taking out of reserves, I think we should try to find that amount of savings. Yes, Jason?
In that same vein, as we go through it, and Councillor Zachariah said it's, sometimes the pennies add up. I would maybe circle your attention over to the food cycler. So we did have that discussion. We realized that although, maybe a great program, the concerns were, was there going to be enough buy-in? There was a cost to the town regarding shipping and handling, and an initial cost, that's $12,000. I mean, right there. So if we're at a point where we are talking about whether we should buy equipment for public works or whether we should close a certain area down, I almost find this to be more of a luxury item, but I mean, one that maybe we could look at next year. Just a thought, putting it out there. That's $12,000.
Great. Thanks. Any other comments? Yes, Councillor Knowles.
Thank you. I have no problems going and trying to find the most efficient ways to do things. I also think it's cognizant that we keep in mind that we're making an investment in this community, and the more pennies that we're looking to pinch, those are going to amount to services that are cut, things that don't happen, things that get put off. A lot of these positions that we're in now are because the buck has been passed, and we're past the point of passing the buck. So now we're at a point when we're having to deal with issues of infrastructure when they're at their 11th hour, at a time in history when the interest rates are at their highest in several years. So I've got no problems looking at these things, but I also understand the fact that if we want to have people live here and pay those taxes for the next 4 or 5 decades, that we have to make these investments now and create a community that's actually welcoming the people moving here, because we're not doing that right now. And if we continue to pass the buck, those people, people my age included, will move away to other communities and supplement their tax bases. So I just really want people to keep that in mind as we're doing these things, to think about future generations past our own political lives here, and what that's going to mean for us. Thanks.
Councillor Knowles, that's a good point, because we don't want to lose people coming to Atikokan because of the infrastructure. We also don't want to lose business or residents because of the tax rate as well. Councillor Martin, did you have your hand up?
Ah, yes, I did, but I forgot what. Oh, okay. Um, yes, thank you, Mayor Ferguson. Question for Brandy. We're going to be negotiating wages here for probably union and non-union. Have you put an allowance in here for any of those numbers, or?
Yes, yeah.
Whereabouts? Where is that?
Well, well, it's in every line. So
Okay.
the labor lines, um, they account for regular labor, and then also we have a couple retirements, and then sometimes you get surprise retirements. So retirements, crossovers, there's a couple crossovers where for people retiring, we want to have cross training going on before they retire. Um, and then an estimate for contract negotiations. Whoops. Also benefits is up for renewal every year, so that generally increases. And there's also an expansion of OMERS that it is eligible, more people are eligible for it, which increase their costs. So again, you can't necessarily determine what those costs are going to be, but a budget is your best guesstimate.
So you've estimated those increases on your own then? You sort of took a guess at it, what it might be?
Yes.
Okay. When it comes to benefits, do you shop that around or do we just keep going back to the same place? Because that's buying insurance as well, right?
Yeah, we have a broker, and we go to market whenever is recommended. Sometimes it's not recommended. We tried to go to market, I believe it was last year, and nobody would bid on us. So
Hmm.
it
Okay. Thank you.
sometimes it's beyond our control.
Jason?
I guess in an effort to move the discussions along, um, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm hearing that ideally, if we could reduce the tax rate by 1% to 3.8%, do that with a combination of reductions in operating budget and possibly a small increase in reserves. If we came back to this council with a budget of that, um, is that satisfactory? Because if I go back, if your direction is to look at the department heads and said, you know, find $30,000 within your operating budgets. And again, like I said, I found 12 just looking. You know, if we take another 25 or 30 from reserves, um, I believe it's attainable to get to that. And then, I mean, next Monday we can bring, you know, we can bring that budget to you and have it passed and get to work essentially,
Let's not get excited.
or closer to having the budget passed. Councillor Sean.
Councillor Shine.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. So when you were looking at bringing this budget to us this time, did you speak to the department heads and did they give you an idea of, or have they cut as much as they're willing to cut?
They've cut as much as they're willing to cut, but council can direct them to cut more.
So when we're looking at, and I don't want to pick on different things, we're looking at public works labor. Is this like labor for a full complement? Because I know we haven't had a full complement this year.
Yeah, so that was the other thing too. There, just the different departments haven't had full complements, but it the expectation is for them to have full complement. Everybody to be full complement.
Yeah.
So that's what's in this budget is as if we have full complements everywhere.
Right. So but we haven't had full complement for now. It'll be 4 months.
We haven't had full complement for a couple years in some departments. So that's where it's hard looking at the previous budgets because they've been out of whack with not being fully staffed.
So really, we're asking the taxpayers to fund a full complement when we're not giving them a full complement of employees.
Well, again, that I haven't been able to delve into the labor as much as I would like to and figure out who was missing staff for how long in the past couple of years, because each year has been different, and then to figure out, because I've been doing more based on prior years, which isn't accurate necessarily depending on the department. So that would have to be looked at more in depth to, because I question whether we have enough to be full complement in some departments.
But if we're short already, I think we're kind of fooling ourselves that we're going to end up with more by the end of the year. Like historically, we're not.
No, well, they're supposed to be hiring. There's interviews going on now, and ideally, they'll be fully staffed within the next month. I would hope.
So if that's two people for 4 months, that's 8 months worth. That would be $50,000 right there, easily.
Yes, but not if you're basing it on prior years, which weren't fully staffed. So that's where it has to be. It would have to be looked into further to see how many staff were missing last year and the year before, because these budget numbers are based on prior years.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. Brandy, how many departments do we have?
I I mean, it depends on what you consider a department. We've got library, museum, public works, recreation, finance admin, um, fire CBO.
So if the department heads said they're not willing to cut anymore without direction from the council, so could we get the department heads to cut $5,000 each?
You can do whatever you want. You can give a percentage and say everybody has to cut this percent. You can say we want a specific dollar, but you can do whatever you want.
Because I think 5,000 would be doable out of there. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but I think it might be doable. And with the 12 grand that Jason just found, that gives us roughly 42. And then the rest could come out of reserves, which isn't.
The only problem with that is you got to think a small budget, like say the museum versus public works. $5,000 to public works is pocket change, whereas it's quite a bit for the museum. That's the only thing about using a dollar value like that. To the museum, it could mean cutting a program or something, whereas public works could probably find that quite easily.
That's Councillor Sean.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. Are we mandated by the unions as to how many unionized employees we have to have for each department?
Only public works department. The rest, it's not in the contract. And public works meaning only public works, not the new waste management portion.
That's Councillor Sean.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. Have we looked at increases to the fees and for all the departments like garbage, recreation?
They're all supposed to, well, except garbage, but the rest of public works and recreation and fire, everybody is supposed to be reviewing their fees. Ideally, you would do that as part of the budget process, but as far as I know, none are ready yet. And generally, that really won't help us a lot. That because you can't do significant increases that are going to actually impact your budget, especially something like recreation. You don't want to double the fees immediately. You want to slowly, gradually. So in a perfect world, every year annually, you would increase your fees a little bit.
So when were the fees last increased?
Depends on the department, but most haven't been done for a very long time. Cemetery's done pretty much every year, and the waste management were done recently. The rest I don't think have been done for years.
Yes, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. Regarding the user fees, I think it's only fair that, like if we're gonna raise the taxes 4%, we should pick, maybe those user fees should go up, according to the tax increase. At least then you're generating a little more revenue every year and people are getting used to paying a little more. We do live in a user pay world now, so, I mean, 4% on a golf thing or swimming or, skiing, I think that would be, it wouldn't be a big number, but it would certainly let people know that the costs are going up and the user fees are going up, even if it's a minor amount like that. Um, I do have one other comment, and I'm sorry, I got a two-part question here. I'll get back to the footbridges. Like, we got an estimate in the budget for 350,000 for one bridge now. Last year, I think there was $40,000 that was estimated to change the door out at the mall, and that Tyler can probably comment on that, but I think that come in at under 20 or 15. And if this footbridge at 350, comes in at 250, then there's 100 grand. That's a percentage point right there off the taxpayer's back. So that it's kind of a moving target, I know, but you know, maybe that could be considered in the reserves too. If we had to take some money out of the reserves and these projects come in under budget, maybe that money can get dumped back into the reserve, um, for the following years. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councillor. Yes, Councillor Zacharias.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. I wouldn't mind, I'm back on materials and services again. Majority of my points were materials and services are historically like thousands under budget, and then some are even asking for increases. So I wouldn't mind department heads double checking those, making sure those are accurate. And if they are increasing or, justifying being thousands over their historical actual budget, some justification. Like I'm looking at specifically 259 admin building. Is that this building or is that public?
Yes.
Okay. Because I think there was new computers bought last year, last budget
Tyler can speak to this year's budget in regards to that for the building.
for admin. Okay.
So we need to replace one of the boilers in the back. The new one is gonna catastrophically fail at any time, and you don't really. This is about the building where you can't run it on one in a cold day. So if we were to have it break in the winter, which they almost always do,
Mm-hmm.
you start risking a lot more damage to the building.
So is that not already 20,000 under line 266?
That's the capital line for the building, yeah. Materials and service goes to things like the alarm systems, when we have to get people up to troubleshoot them, the annual inspections on our HVAC system, things like that.
When that needs an increase of $5,000?
I didn't do the budget for that line.
Okay. Because that was because I see the boilers, yeah, under the capital expenditures. But like under 266, but under 259, you're asking for an increase of $5,000. I'm just wondering for what?
I'll refer that one back to Jason.
Yeah, no, nothing specific. I think it just like they said, the previous year was almost 16. So it's kind of it's walking that fine line of, well, what's going to break next. You want to make sure that you have enough in there. Looking at those historical averages, and I think it was more about, like you said, doing sort of repairs to the building and that.
Mm-hmm.
That was
But weren't there just a whole bunch of computers bought Wasn't that a
That's a separate line.
one?
The computers is,
That's not,
yeah,
That's not materials and
no,
services.
no. The M&S for the building is physically the building. So if we were gonna, we needed, I'll say a new desk or, something in the back, I believe that would go under M&S as well. But it's mostly, I think, the service contract under that as well. So that's having those uh, companies come in and do the service work on the control systems, I
Okay.
believe.
And we're anticipating more.
Yes, I can't give you specifics as to what, right? But again, looking at last year and seeing what we were doing, then yeah, I mean, we do up those lines a bit for sure.
Because we only went over budget by $600.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not an exact science, right? By any means, for sure not. So, but again, I think it's important to note that, if council can give us clear direction on a target to hit, and if they, direct us to say, look, go find that $67,000. If you've got to take a little bit from reserves, fine. But I think with clear direction and a goal to hit, I think it would be maybe better to let the department heads, because again, they're going to know where, like I said, they have a little bit of a buffer, right? So I think that it would be fair to say sit down and work together to find those small reductions that could add up to enough to get us where we want to be. So I think it's just important to know what council wants, and I believe that we could probably make that happen.
Thank you.
Councillor Shine.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. My question's for Tom. Tom, you run summer programs, correct? Now, do you do them usually at individual, the parks that we have within the community? How would you save money by offering everything under one site, say the ice is out now at the arena, and have it in one place?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Instead of having it at Lone Pine, one there, and having one over by St. Pat's, offer your programs in one facility.
Currently, we're not going to have a summer program this year just from staffing issues, but that's typically what we've done. We've rotated it from one location to the other, but it's only been at one, and the staff moves remotely depending on, we used all three of them at different times.
So with the staffing issues, then you're not looking at increasing it because people are asking more services for their kids to make it, as Gord says, for making it a more hospitable community to live in. That's not happening. Okay, thank you.
Just thinking of another item when we start going through the budgets and stuff. In discussions with the ADC this year, doesn't look like they are going to be successful in having summer students at the Tourist Bureau. That's a discussion obviously for another day, but if the Tourist Bureau is not open this summer, then, I would say we're probably going to reduce our cost by at least $5,000 there for the summer as well. So different items as we go through the budget, right?
Councillor Zacharias.
Thank you. Sorry, just to clarify, we're not doing summer programs this year? Okay, so then what is this in the line 615 play full-time labor that says more summer programs? 10,500?
Labor will be charged to that account. If we have work that needs to be done on the summer playgrounds, like mulch or update a water break at the outdoor rinks. The outdoor rinks are used. Um, we have maintenance for that, and that's what that gets charged for.
Okay, so not summer programs. It's okay, because it says more summer programs, so it's just for playground upkeep in general. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. So can we take a consensus at what number council would be happy at? Instead of beating around the bush, and obviously we're not cutting a whole lot of monies around here. So it's gonna have to go back to the department heads to try and reach the 3.9 or the 4%. So what would the consensus of council be? What percentage would you be happy with?
I would be happy with keeping it, personally, I would be happy with keeping it under 4.
Christie?
3.5,
Three
3.5.
and a half.
I wish.
Sharpen the
I kind of
pencils.
feel the same. I share the same sentiment as Councillor Knowles. Um, I feel like we're in a really difficult situation here. And yeah, if we're able to cut it and get it down, great. But to be perfectly honest, like looking around us at every community in the near vicinity of Northwestern Ontario, even 4.8 is low. It's low in comparison to Thunder Bay, Fort Francis, Dryden. I don't like to compare to other places, but that is the reality, unfortunately. So yeah, if we can get it down, I'd be great. I'm happy for that. But it's unfortunate that we are in the position that we're in now, and I don't want to see services cut. Um, and the reality is things have increased in cost. It's tough.
John, any thoughts?
Yeah, but they're not nice thoughts. It would be nice to get it down to 4%, but I don't think that's the reality of it. We can't continue not to repair our roads, hear the complaints about what's going on with our infrastructure. If you don't, if you want things to be decent, it's just the reality of it.
I hear what you're saying, but I don't think we're cutting any $1 million projects. We're looking to fine tune some areas where, like Jason said, we're not looking to save millions. We're looking to shave, a few $1,000s off certain items. I think if we sharpen our pencil, we can get to that number. But I don't think we're getting rid of capital spending on big projects. I don't think our infrastructure is going to crumble by not buying food recyclers. Or Councillor Knowles?
I made my thoughts pretty clear earlier. I'd be fine at 4.5%, if there's some efficiencies that could be found. But again, I get back to the fact that as someone who's going to be paying this rate for potentially the next 4 to 6 decades, that I'm willing to eat that cost. And I would think anyone who wants people to live here for that amount of time would also be willing to take that hit right now, so that we can get these things done and continue to build a quality of life, so as we continue to attract more people to this community, that they will also see that value and continue to invest in the town. Thanks.
Councillor Zacharias?
Same sentiments as before. Try to get immaterial things like you said, small, as many, realistic budgets as possible. I know you've already cut down a lot, but I am fine with 4.5.
Okay, well, that didn't resolve anything. Councillor Martin, I think we heard your comments.
I'm looking at 3.5% now. Jimmy Johnson and I are retired. We're on a fixed income, so if we can make up the difference in the counselor pay to cover that 4.5%, I'd be happy. Okay, I shouldn't have made a joke there, but in all seriousness, I think the taxpayers are going to see that we are spending money. O'Brien Street has been a big problem, and that's very visual. I think it's going to look good on everybody if that street project gets underway this year. And if we can defer a percent increase this year and add it next year when they have a smooth road to drive on, people might be happy about that. Thank you.
Thank you. So that didn't resolve anything, but uh, I would, for what my comment is worth, I would like to see us sharpen our pencil, save a little bit here and there, and see if we could come back under 4. Okay. And that'll be Councillor Sean.
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. Brandy, what would be the bottom line for you to be comfortable to have in reserves, and who helps you determine what's that level?
Well, there's ratios and indicators you can do um, against your expenses. So municipal affairs gives us kind of like a report card each year, and they call it a financial indicator return, I think. And they'll have your reserve balance, good, medium, or high risk. It's
Like a
basically your risk. So if we take all of these, I think we'll be on the radar for high risk with reserves. Now, they don't send the police after us or anything. And I don't mind taking from reserves with the expectation of, because sometimes when you have large projects, you take from reserves, but then the next year you put money into reserves and you replenish your reserves. Whereas I don't see us being able to do that next year because we're going to have other large projects to do. So that's where my concern lies. Um, but in the end, we really don't have much of a choice as to, unless we want a 20% tax increase, we really can't um, not take from reserves. We have to. Um, and I mean, most years, a lot of the projects don't get done and we end up putting money back into reserves at the end of the year. So maybe that'll bump it up a little bit. Um, I don't know of the actual number I'm comfortable with, but generally at year end, our reserves are between 4.5 and 6.5 million.
Thank you, Brenny.
One other thing we're not doing is we're funding these projects with grants, with our tax base and with reserves as well. So we're not going out and borrowing $5 million to do O'Brien either. Like this is money that we've set aside, grants that we have, and taxes that we're collecting. So I think there's some positive notes to be taken there that, we may be taking some money out of reserves, $2 million out of reserves, but we're not going out and borrowing and paying interest on. Maybe we're not getting as much interest back, but we're not paying interest.
And that's with two very large projects amongst the little smaller projects.
So as much as it sounds dire, I think there's some positives to be taken that we are funding this without having to borrow money. So I think that's a positive uh, for our financial statement. We are paying down our debt, and we've paid down our debt substantially in the last few years, and we'll continue to do that. So that would put us in better stead going forward as well because we won't be carrying as much debt. Councillor Shine?
Mayor Ferguson. Brandy, so as Mayor Ferguson was mentioning, we're not borrowing any money, but once our audits are done and we're at that stage where we can maybe think about borrowing, what would be a good number to have in reserves if we wanted to borrow money? Like how would that affect us, our borrowing capacity?
I'm not really sure if
Would it
that
be?
would be a factor. I'm not really, I mean, I guess they want to see you being financially stable, right? But
Right.
yeah, we have the ability, we have room. There's again, there's a ratio as to, and municipal affairs gives us a statement saying, okay, you're allowed to borrow up to this much. Um, so we do have room to borrow, and that room goes up every year as we pay down our debt. Um, as far as reserves, I don't know how that would affect the lenders as to how, I don't know how they calculate there.
Okay.
But I don't expect there being any issues. For example, if we need to borrow money next year for Mercury Bridge, or I don't see any problem,
Thank you.
don't expect any problem with that.
So if anybody has an issue with what I'm gonna say, they can comment, but I think if we give it back to finance and the department heads and see if we can get it under 4% for the next meeting or sooner than later. Oh, Councilor Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. Just to put these numbers in perspective, and I don't know what, Brandy, I don't know what people are paying for taxes on their property, but I just I just was assuming on a $5,000 tax, if you're paying $5,000 taxes on your house, 4% of that is $200 divided by 12 months is like 16 or $17 a month. So like I'm okay with 4%. Um, and it's not a whole lot of money when you divide it out that way. I don't know what everybody sitting at this table pays for taxes, but that's kind of that's the numbers. It's not a lot, but it is a lot for some, I'm sure. But anyways, so I'm going to put my vote in. I'm good at 4. If we can come back to the next meeting right around 4.
Okay, just to speak to that, our average single detached residential, the average 2023 municipal tax was 2,786. At the 4.8 increase in this scenario, that would come to 2921, so it would be an increase of $136, just to
Per
give it
year.
some perspective.
Yeah. $136.
Councilor Knowles?
Thank you, Mayor Ferguson. I think a few of us had indicated the 4.5%, so I would be in favor of getting some numbers from the department heads at that 4.5% with some areas highlighted, that how we could get that down to the 4%. That will give us the leeway to make those decisions to figure out if there's some common ground, and I think there's probably some room for wiggle in there that will allow everyone to come away with a good result.
Okay then? Yes, with that, we will direct finance and the department heads to do their best and come back with a number that we're best. Okay, moved by Councilor Shine, seconded by Councilor Johnson. Resolved that this meeting do now adjourn. In favor?